is the There Is Another Way podcast from SpencerBruce.com. Making life work as a creative. Hello and welcome to this week's There Is Another Way podcast. How are you all doing out there? I hope you are all safe and well. In the UK, once again, we are still in lockdown. It seems like this is never ending at the moment, trying to stay as positive as possible. But I hope wherever you are in the world, maybe things are a little bit better or are certainly improving. I don't want to spend too much of the podcast talking about the negative things and the things that are obviously being talked around all the time, no matter where you go. So let's just jump in and start talking about creativity. So the first thing I want to ask you is, how have the creative exercises been going for you? How have you been finding them? How are you getting on with them? Did you manage to fail? How did you manage to fail? I certainly tried to fail when writing a song. I went for something which was really obtuse, which, I thought definitely wouldn't work. And in the end, didn't sound too bad. I haven't actually finished it off into a complete track yet, but I probably will. And as soon as it's finished, I will post it on the podcast and you can see, or at least hear, how I tried to fail. How did you find last week's exercise, the infinite pencil line? Again, I took it into my domain, I took it into the sound world and tried to think of an infinite sound sine wave that I was manipulating and shaping. And I've ended up again with quite a ambient piece of music. Again, not completely finished at this point in time, but again, as soon as it is finished, I will put it on the podcast and you can see how I approach the idea of tackling the infinite line. In other podcast news, we have a couple of guests lined up for the new year, going to start recording them soon. So really excited about that. I'm really excited to share those with you. The other thing we will be doing soon, we'll be running creativity Kickstarter workshops. Now, I haven't formalized a date yet, but very soon I will be announcing some dates for workshops. They will be obviously at this point in time online virtual workshops via Zoom, which will be coming very, very soon. I'm planning to run a whole bunch of hour-long workshops, which you can sign up for on Eventbrite. Dates to be confirmed at the moment, and obviously these will be online virtual events, but we will talk through the creative process, your issues, your problems, how you need help with your creativity. So really excited to start running those and really hope you guys will come along and find them interesting and exciting, and also obviously inspiring to help you kickstart your creativity. On this week's podcast, I am going to be talking about underestimating time and how we can be a little bit more focused on how we use our time. One thing the current situation that we are in has done, it seems to have meddled with time. Both time is going extremely slowly, but extremely quickly at the same time. And I don't know if any of you out there experience this, but it's certainly my experience at the moment. And one thing that I have noticed is, technically, I have more time. And one thing that I've noticed is that whilst I am not having to travel or commute anywhere, I'm not traveling to gigs for hours on end, I'm not commuting into where I teach, all really, really negative things. And don't get me wrong, of course, I would want to be doing them. The factor is, if you add all that time up, that's hours and hours per week, even almost perhaps a day, or in some cases 2 days a week that I would normally be traveling in terms of hours, that I am not traveling anymore. And we can only really view that as a positive in the fact that it gives us more and more time to do the things that we want to do. And then I reflect back and I go, actually, perhaps I'm not getting as much done as I should, even though I now have all this extra time. And I have no idea if you guys out there are feeling the same way, but some of the people I've been talking to recently do things like, I have this extra time, but I'm not sure I'm maximizing it to its fullest potential, or I'm not sure I'm maximizing it in the way that I want. And one of the problems that I realized that I have, and I wanted to share with you, is this concept that I do a lot. It's the idea of underestimating time. And what I mean by that is when I look at my to-do list or I look at my task lists and the things that I need to do, a lot of the time you look at something and you go, oh, that's only going to take a few minutes. And I'm going to give you a really simple example of this. And that is posting an image on, say, Instagram. Now, of course, if you are in the business world or you're an artist or you're a musician and you're trying to promote yourself, there is always this big push these days to always be active on social media channels and to be putting material out there and constantly engaging. And this is one of the key areas, I think, where this principle of underestimating time really, really does take its toll. Because if I write down on my to-do list, post an image to Instagram, you look at that and you go, oh, that's simple. It's going to take seconds. Now, what I have been doing is I have actually been making a note of the amount of time that it takes to do some of these activities. And what I'm trying to get you to think about with this exercise is something that I've just been through, is this idea of, a lot of the time I really do underestimate the amount of time it takes to do a lot of the tasks that I have on my list. Because in principle, when you write them down and when you look at them on paper, they seem really, really simple. They seem that they will take minutes. But when you start doing them, you realize actually those minutes are tens of minutes. So let's go back to the Instagram example. Now, if you are super organized and you know what you are doing, perhaps you have a collection of images that you want to post. And I guess this would be my top tip of a way around underestimating time, is to allocate maybe an hour or 2 hours of taking and collecting pictures in a diary format, so you know on which day, which poster you're going to. But when I got down to it, by the time you upload the picture, you think about the caption you're going to say, you start adding in all of the tags, particularly if it's Instagram. When you add that all up, and at least for me, it's taken me somewhere between 7 to 10 minutes to do that. Now, actually, that's quite a lot of time. And in the grand scheme of a day, it's not a lot of time. But in the grand scheme of underestimating time, when you look at it on your to-do list, it is a lot of time. Because if on your to-do list, you've got perhaps maybe 10 of these, what you perceive as being very, very short tasks. I don't know, another example for me is like reply to John's email. And you go, okay, that's blah, blah, that's done. Even the thought of it is you've replied to the email in your head. But when you sit down and you start writing it, you realize that replying to John's email, again, is taking you maybe 10 or 15 minutes. You are underestimating the time it takes to do this. And if you have several emails to reply to, then again, you are adding a lot of time into your day doing tasks which on paper appear very, very small. I then looked at some of the other things on my list. So, for example, creating a YouTube video. So you think to your mind, okay, creating a YouTube video, so if I'm doing a 5-minute video, it's only really going to take me, 10 minutes. But by the time you set the cameras up, by the time you've thought about what you're going to say, by the time you've planned it out, by the time you've filmed it and faffed around with all the lights and getting everything right, and all the mistakes that, well, maybe you don't, but I invariably make. And then the time to edit, because editing takes double that time. So if you've got a 5-minute video, you're probably going to spend maybe even 15, 20 minutes editing it, if not more, because you've just got to watch back and choose what you're going to take out, choose if you're going to use any cutaway shots. Again, preparing can save you a lot of time on this, but it's not the simple process. Now, maybe I'm teaching you to suck eggs. Maybe this is something you already know about. And when you think about a task, you, in your mind, know how long it's going to take. But me personally, I look at my to-do list and I go, well, that's going to take me a few minutes. That's a few minutes there, a few minutes there. I'm not going to get a ton of things done. Ultimately, I start making my way through my daily task list, and perhaps I don't get everything done because I have underestimated the time it takes to do tasks. Now, wind that up to an even bigger level and you say to yourself, I want to finish this project. For me, I want to finish an album project. You think, oh, it's only going to take a couple of weeks or maybe a month or a day to write that song and a day to write that song. But in reality, and again, I'm really bad at this sometimes, it takes so much longer. And it takes so much longer because, and this is the crux of this whole message, you've underestimated the time. Therefore, you haven't allocated the time that perhaps the task should take in your head. Therefore, you start to feel stressed because you've put too many other tasks into your task list. So you are task heavy and you can't fully concentrate on the writing process or the creative process because you're worried about all the other bits and pieces you thought would take you seconds and seconds or minutes and minutes to do and end up don't taking minutes to do. So what's the root of this problem? For me as well, I think the biggest root of this problem, and I don't want to go off on a anti-computer, anti-social media kind of bend again, but it's underestimating how much time in a day we spend on these tools. Email is a requirement now, but email really does suck a lot of time out of your day. Just interacting now sometimes with websites, you log on to something, you've got an email in and you need to do X, Y, Z, and it's not a site you've been to for a while, or it's your gas company and you can't remember the password, so you have to reset the password. That takes a few minutes. All of these things take a lot longer. And I am completely guilty of underestimating the time that it takes to do that. My question to you are you a time underestimator or are you perfect? I'd love to hear from you. If you are really good at judging the amount of times, please do hit the Facebook group and let us know your tips. Now, for me, the biggest tip and the biggest way to get around this and what I plan to do is, again, it's all through planning. It's actually looking at a task list and allowing maybe 3 times as long for each task. And of course, trying to be more prepared. Going back to the Instagram example, perhaps having 10 days worth of pictures or 10 posts worth of pictures already lined up. So you allocate, again, I was going to say an hour, but even that would be underestimating the time to do that. Maybe 2 to 3 hours on a Monday, once every 2 weeks, where you allocate that to Instagram time. You get everything sorted out and then you can just go on and post. Or of course you can use some of these scheduled posters, and that's probably the best idea. But that goes against the other idea, is if you really want to get on social media and if you really want to promote yourself, then of course you need to be interacting with people and replying to comments. I spend a lot of time, I tend to reply to every single comment on my YouTube channel. I get thousands and thousands of comments. I think, I've got a few comments to reply to, won't take me long. But as soon as I start doing it, sometimes maybe 3 or 4 hours have gone. And now I reflect back and now I look at it, I realize that is where all that extra time that I would normally have been commuting or traveling or driving somewhere, that is what's eating it up. And perhaps why some of the projects that I want to get done aren't getting done quick enough. Thank you for listening to this week's podcast. I'd love to know about how you underestimate time, or if you underestimate time. Please do send me an email. Please do head over to the Facebook group, leave a comment, join the conversation, or at least start the conversation over there. As I mentioned in previous podcasts, a real push for 2021 is to grow the Creative Kickstarter community, and as a way that we can all help each other out and help each other to be more creative. If you are so inclined and you like my podcast and would like to support the podcast, please do head over to buymeacoffee.com/Spencer Bruce. There is a link in the box below. Sorry, that's Spencer Bruce Music. And hit me up with a coffee. That would be greatly, greatly appreciated. Onwards. Let's see where we are with the whole world situation this time next week. I've been Brucey. Most importantly, take care, my friends, and I will catch you later.